Welcome to part one of configuring the BIOS. Now in part one I just kind of want to chalk talk with you here and help you understand the various terminologies that are so important on the A+ exam to understand exactly what they're asking you in a question. But this will also translate directly out to the real world, as so much of A+ will. And I'll say that quite a bit, but this one for sure will, because you'll hear these different terminologies and they really all mean the same thing. And we're talking about configuring the BIOS. Now this is going to be a two-part video, and in the second part I'm actually going to restart my machine and show you how to enter the BIOS CMOS setup utility and see how you would make some changes and what you can do. Okay, so the first thing is this process of configuring the BIOS. Now we're not talking about flashing the BIOS. Flashing the BIOS is where we upgrade the entire BIOS system itself with some software we get from the manufacturer. So we're not making a major upgrade of the BIOS. We're just going in and tweaking some of the settings out there. Okay. Now the way we change anything in the functionality of the BIOS, we run the CMOS settings program in BIOS. Now you'll never hear that out there in the real world. Nobody's ever going to bust into your office on Tuesday morning and say, quick, we've got to go make a CMOS settings change. No, what they're going to do is they're going to come in and they're going to tell you a phrase that means we need to go make some CMOS settings changes. They're going to say we need to go change the BIOS, update the BIOS, we need to go into the BIOS, we need to check the BIOS. Now you may also hear them say updating CMOS. Probably in 25 years I've heard that twice, but most people don't get that specific, but you could hear update CMOS, okay? But very, very rare. Most of the time it's going to have something to do with the BIOS. Now understand, you're not really changing the BIOS. You're changing settings in the CMOS that the BIOS code's going to run, okay? Well, forget all that straining at gnats about exactly what we're doing. That's the terminology you're going to hear. How do I actually go about start this whole process of changing these CMOS settings in BIOS? Well, that depends on the system you're running. Now this is pretty standard and straightforward. If you want to know how to get the CMOS settings program to run on your computer, you have to simply restart your operating system, and usually somewhere that flashes up on your screen, the startup screen itself will tell you how to enter the BIOS CMOS setup utility. Now sometimes they won't mention CMOS out there either. They will just say the BIOS utility, setup utility to make BIOS changes, but they'll tell you what key to hit, and it'll flash up really quickly. You have to be watching for it, but the bottom line is usually it's the F1, the F2, or the delete key. So what you can do, as soon as any boot up activity seems to be going on, just start hitting F1, F2, and delete, F1, F2, and delete, and you'll probably grab it on one of them, okay? You should be able to see it on the screen and know exactly which one to hit. If you're running a compact system, you're probably going to hit F10 to enter the BIOS CMOS setup functionality. And in part two, that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go out there, restart the machine, enter the CMOS settings section using that BIOS code, and I'll just kind of step you through some things and let you see what you can do out there, okay? But from time to time you're going to hear, well, to do this functionality, to make virtualization happen, you're going to have to go change a setting in the BIOS to access certain functionalities, or for this program to behave, you're going to have to go change the boot sequence or the startup sequence in the BIOS. This is what we're talking about. So join me in part two, and we'll go out there and kick that off and show you what it looks like.